weekend. It is good to be back. I don't know if you were aware, I was out sick for a good period of time. I ended up with E. coli, and I can tell you, if you've never had it, you do not want it. I had it, and I am a first-person testimonial of don't do that. It does not feel good. So one of the most difficult things I've ever been through, but I'm feeling great. It's good to be back. So I'm excited to have a great conversation with you this morning. You are starting the week off right by being on this coaching call. So I thought about what I wanted to share with you, and I came up with what I call five keys to success in real estate. You know, one of the things that I'm observing, especially over the last 8, 9, 10 months, since we've seen a pretty dramatic shift in the market, is that your competition is less. And I mean less in two regards. Less in terms of the number of people. We're seeing agents getting out of the business because of the nature of the business today. But we're also seeing that agents are less mentally and emotionally, your competition. And I have to tell you, both of those are great news for you. Great news because that means there's less competition, and the competition that's there is not as strong as it could otherwise be. So great job on being here, because really what it's about, if your competition is less, that implies that you're more. And one of the things that I know that you guys are dedicated to, by the mere fact that you're on this Zoom call, is you're dedicated to your personal growth and becoming more to offer more to your clients. So, John, what are the 5 keys that you've written down to success in real estate? So let me just share those with you, because I assume that that's what you asked, right? So the first thing I want to just share with you is just a personal story. You know, when I got into the business of real estate 30 years ago, coming up on 30 years ago, it'll be 30 years this July, actually. I got into real estate by chance. It wasn't my first choice. I intended to be an attorney. And for the lack of a better phrase, I failed out of law school and had to decide what I was going to do in lieu of law and being an attorney. And the next best answer I came up with was real estate. So it's all I've ever done. So when I talk about, the 5 keys to success in real estate, they really come from that personal experience. So, when I first got into the business, I was not doing well. And I wasn't doing well because my mind was focused on the wrong things. And if my mind was focused on the wrong things, that meant my activities were the wrong thing, and I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. My first broker manager congratulated me for getting hired by his brokerage. He said to me, "John, we've never hired a rookie before in our 32, 33 years of business." And I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then a year later, they were out of business. So my claim to fame is I put that company out of business, which probably is partially true, because my production certainly did not help them. If anything, I was a liability that year for them. But, I think back about what I was focused on, and I was focused on all the wrong things. That manager had me focused on marketing and what I could do from a marketing standpoint to make myself more visible to the marketplace. And the problem with that is that real estate is not it's not a retail business, it's a direct sales business. And you have to be willing to go out and find the customers, not just simply wait for them. I know that that's a philosophy within the business of real estate, but that's a philosophy of guaranteed failure. Well, the fact is, most real estate agents wait for business to come to them. And as a result, most real estate agents don't sell a lot of real estate. They don't make a lot of money. So, well then, John, what are the 5 things that you want to talk about? If, waiting for business and focusing on ways to increase your visibility in the marketplace and wait for people to approach you, what would you do instead of that? Well, here's the first thing that I would do. So if you're taking notes, please write this down. The first thing that I would do is proactively connect with people. And the key to that is proactively. But the operative word there is, of course, to connect. We have to connect with people, because real estate, ultimately, what I learned, unfortunately, through a pathway of significant failure over those first 4 years of being in the business, is that real estate is all about people and really has nothing to do with real estate. It has nothing to do with homes, because it's really about connecting with people, particularly buyers, secondarily sellers, but both of them, buyers and sellers, and getting them to choose you versus the competition. Well, it's difficult for them to choose you if they don't know you exist. So we have to be proactive in connecting with people. Remember, gang, the number one human need is acknowledgement or acceptance. And if you will proactively go out and connect with people and acknowledge people and affirm people, then you're well on your way to separating yourself from the competition. So the question is, well, how do you connect with people and how do you really separate yourself from the competition? Well, it comes down to being proactive in prospecting, not doing what I did, which was creating brochures, ads for bus benches, for shopping carts, for magazines, because back in the day, the internet didn't exist. I mean, the modern version of that today is real estate agents having an Instagram account, a Facebook account, and other forms of social media, and then posting on that and hoping that people respond. And the truth is, yes, they will respond to some extent, but not to the levels that we need to with predictability and duplication for a high level of business. You can do some business through social media and you can do some business through advertising, but not with predictability and duplication to a high level. So if you want to do business to a high level, man, you've got to get out there and you've got to talk to people. You have to have conversations about real estate, in real estate, with strangers specifically, but then in general with people that you know and people that you want to get to know more. If you think about it, really, any conversation with a potential client, whether there's somebody you already know, maybe really well or somewhat well, or somebody you don't know at all, it really all is a test. It's a test on the part of the stranger to determine if they should choose you versus the thousands of other choices. Because you think about it, in your market where you are, people literally have thousands of choices amongst which to choose to decide whether they're going to choose you versus thousands of other people. And really, the best way for them to determine that is ultimately to determine how they feel or how you make them feel. Now, they don't process it this way. They don't say, well, how does John make me feel? But John certainly does make them feel a certain way. And if John doesn't make them feel a certain way, then they're not going to work with me. They're going to work with somebody else. The same is true of you. If they don't feel a certain way about you, they're not going to work with you. So, well, how do you connect with people? Well, the number one way to do that is to simply ask questions. So, gang, you have to be willing on a daily basis to acknowledge that the only way to build a predictable, duplicable business long-term in real estate is to have conversations with people and then ask them a lot of questions on a daily basis. A new group of people every single day, as well as a follow-up conversation with the same people, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, but maintaining contact with people, building and maintaining relationships, because that's what real estate ultimately is about. So if you want to be successful in real estate, number one, recognize that you have to connect with people. So I just want you to think about that. Just take an assessment of last week. Last week, how good were you at connecting with people? I don't mean waiting for people, that you sent out some postcards or you did some door knocking, leaving things hanging on people's doors, or you posted some things on social media and you waited for people and maybe you had a conversation or two through text or through direct messaging on social media. But how good were you at connecting with people and having face-to-face or person-to-person conversations last week? And if the answer is, well, not very good, or I didn't do a lot of it, or, well, last week was kind of a unique week. Well, listen, gang, every week is a unique week. And you can say that every week there's something that could happen that would prevent you from doing your job of connecting with people. So be honest with yourself. How good were you last week in connecting with people and having conversations and really connecting with them and asking them a ton of questions? Remember, the number one human need is acceptance or validation. How good were you last week in reaching out to people and asking questions about them? You know, if you know them, how have they been? How's the job going? How's the family? Do they have any plans this year for a vacation with the family? How are things going with the new job? If they have a new job, do you even know that they have a new job? Do you know what they actually do? In other words, being much more curious about the potential clients, the potential prospects that you would have available to you if you were to have conversations with them. it comes down to a mantra that I have of being more curious and less judgmental. I think it was a quote from Walt Whitman, who said basically, it is our charge to be more curious and less judgmental. And in doing that, we will build more relationships. Well, that is completely true when it comes to real estate, because real estate is nothing more than an endeavor to build relationships long-term and be the person that people want to work with when it comes to buying or selling real estate. So if you will ask more questions of people, they give you an opportunity to learn more about them. And when you learn more about them and they know that you know more about them, it's going to do something inevitable. It's going to build a relationship or a connection or build ultimately rapport. Here's an important point as it relates to connecting with people. Don't assume that you know. If you will assume that you don't know and you'll ask a lot of questions, be curious, and they give you the answers and you listen, the inevitable is going to happen. You're going to learn a lot about them that you didn't know. They're going to pay attention that you learned a lot about them that you didn't know. And if you respond with energy and enthusiasm and excitement about those things that you've discovered, they're going to feel good about you. And ultimately, again, that is the true test. You want to separate yourself from the competition. How do you make people feel? Let me ask that again. How do you make people feel when you're in conversations with them? See, but it's difficult if you're not having conversations with people to allow them to feel any way but indifferent to you. So if you'll, number one, have conversations with people, but then number two, make certain that you ask a lot of questions about them so that you validate them. Ultimately, I know how people are going to feel about you. They're going to feel good about you because they're going to feel safe and secure knowing that you care about them. And when you care about people and they know that, it helps them feel safe and secure. One of the number one things that you can do in real estate is to ultimately help people feel safe. So be more curious, less judgmental. Really want to know. Be willing to ask questions. And of course, that entire process is what we call prospecting. I just said it. It's the first time I've said it since we started this conversation today, because most real estate agents don't like the word prospecting. But really, ultimately, that's what we're talking about, is being willing to have conversation with people. So if you want to be successful in real estate, step number one, of course, gang, is to connect with people. It's to talk to people. It's to ask a ton of questions, to discover more about them. And when you do that, and they know that you actually care, then they'll begin to actually be willing to connect with you and care about ultimately what you can do for them and how you can help them. So that's step number one. Step number two is to offer value. So what is your value? Let me ask you that question specifically to you. What is your value? Do you know what your value proposition is to people in the business of real estate? And if you say to me as a general statement, well, it's my market knowledge. Well, that's great, but I mean, gang, come on. Today's business is different than it was 30 years ago. When I was in the business as a rookie 30 years ago, I was the gatekeeper of all information. If a client wanted information on a listing, they had to go through me because there was no internet. There was no multiple listing service where they could log on to their computer and check out what was going on Zillow or real estate, UtahRealestate.com, or any other number of sources, where today they can circumvent you and get their information, right? Back in the day, they had to go through me. They had to go through us. We were the gatekeepers of information. Well, today you're not the gatekeeper of information. So you can say that your value to people is the fact that you have market data. But the truth is, gang, they have that data. They don't need you for market data. That is not your value. So if you think that that's your value, I'm going to ask you to reassess what your real value is, to rethink that, to come up with a different plan, because that is ultimately not your value. So what is your value? I believe, number one, it's your ability to communicate with people. That is your number one value. Because really, ultimately, whether we're in a market like the one that we just left, coming up on a year ago, or the one we're in today, or a traditional market, or the market like I got into 30 years ago, or any market I've seen since, the number one ability that you have to create value and separate yourself from the competition is your ability to communicate. It is not an option. It is absolutely necessary. So number one, it's your ability to communicate. That is how you offer value. Your ability to negotiate. Think about how effective that skill is in today's marketplace. how important it is in today's marketplace to be able to negotiate the terms, to negotiate the price, because of all the uncertainty that there is with respect to appraisals and those coming back different than we expect them. Sellers having different expectations based upon the craziness of the market. Buyers having different expectations based upon the fact that interest rates have increased so dramatically. And their ability to afford homes has been affected greatly. All of that speaks to your ability, the need of your ability to become a much better communicator and specifically a much better negotiator. What's the second thing as it relates to value? Well, your proactivity. Again, one of the things that should separate you from your competition, if you actually do it, is your proactivity. The proactive things that you do in terms of generating leads and putting buyers and sellers together, connecting your buyers to listings, connecting your sellers to buyers. Your ability to go out and proactively find people who want to buy and sell real estate. Again, I hate to say it, but it's called. So if you're great at being proactive, right? It's one of the things that you can talk about. That separates you from your competition. Because heaven knows, the fact is most real estate agents do not spend any time during the day proactively prospecting. They do passive things and they wait for the business to come to them. So your ability to communicate, to negotiate, your proactivity in going out and finding the business speaks to a value that your competition can't offer to buyers and sellers. See, if there's low inventory as a proactive agent, proactive buyer's agent, if you go out and knock on doors and ask people if they're interested in selling their home and you find inventory that's not on the MLS, can you think of greater value for your buyer than that? And of course, the answer is no. There is no greater value. You're finding inventory that they can't find themselves online. But what about sellers? See, sellers want you to sell their home. And in today's marketplace, buyers are much more sophisticated and they're much choosier, they're much pickier, they're much more uncertain. And so your ability to go out there and to find buyers, right, and connect them to the seller, there's a great deal of value in that. That proactivity, that willingness to do that is absolutely valuable to a seller. And see, you shouldn't assume that your competition is doing that because the fact is they're not. And then the next thing is this. And I wonder as I'm going through these, your ability to communicate, to negotiate, your proactivity in prospecting and connecting with people. But what about this? Have you thought about this? Do you mention to people these things? Do you let people know that these are the things that you do that actually separate yourself from the competition? How about this one? What about your willingness and consistency at following a schedule? See, by putting together a written specific schedule that identifies your key core activities, and then following that gives you an opportunity then to go to your buyers and sellers and say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer or Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the reason you should choose to work with me is that unlike most real estate agents, I actually follow a very specific schedule that has key defined activities that I know as a professional agent are necessary for the success of you selling your home or the success of you finding a home in today's challenging market. Can I share with you what those key activities are? Well, yeah, I guess, yeah. What are those key activities? And then tell them what it is that you do on a daily basis that separates you from the competition or that you should be doing that separates you from the competition. Like getting to the office at a specific time every single day, practicing your skill set of communication, prospecting, how to have great conversations with people, how to build rapport and separate yourself from the competition, how to actually pick up the phone and prospect, finding leads, how to knock on doors and introduce yourself to people who are looking to either buy or sell real estate. In other words, generating organically the business to connect people together, buyers and sellers, because that is the essence of real estate and sales. So are you doing that? Are you sharing that message with potential clients, with prospects, and letting them know that that's what you do? That this is what separates me in essence from my competition. It's not my sign, it's not my card, it's not my company, it's not the car I drive, it's not the way that I dress, it's not even my quote unquote market knowledge. It's what I'm willing to do that other real estate agents aren't willing to do. Follow a specific schedule, show up consistently and do my job, even the difficult thing of prospecting, of picking up the phone and being rejected over and over and over again and letting them know that you do that. Gang, that is powerful. So if you're not doing that, of course, you need to do it. in terms of the activities, but if you are doing it, are you sharing that as a message to people, letting them know? What a great soundbite to let people know that you follow a specific schedule, that you practice your skills on a daily basis, that you show up to the office consistently and you prospect, you knock on doors, you make phone calls, you make follow-up calls, that you work every single day to set an appointment with a qualified buyer or seller to put parties together. Because here's the fact, gang, I don't know if you know this or not, but it requires a buyer and seller for every successfully closed transaction. There is no sell without a buyer and there is no sell without a seller. And your job is to bring those people together. And then of course, the fourth thing would be market knowledge. And of course, you should have market knowledge. And the more you know about the market, can talk about that naturally. Of course, it helps people see that you are the conduit to information. Because the number one question that we get in real estate that people ask us when they know we're in real estate is, what? How is the market? And if you can answer that question succinctly and powerfully in the fewest words possible, then of course you're going to be perceived as the market expert. And the last thing, of course, I would say is ultimately your ability to communicate all of this in an effective way. It goes back to what I said about sharing this. So do you offer value? Do you know what your value is? And can you communicate that value in a way that people see that, buy off on it, and you are effectively separated from the competition? Because otherwise, gang, if you don't, you're left to being separated from the competition by two ways. Number one, discounting your commission, or number two, telling sellers a price that they want to hear, not what they need to hear, in order to get their home sold in today's marketplace. So my question for you is, how are you going to offer value and separate yourself from the competition? The third thing is this, in terms of being successful, the 5 keys to success in real estate in today's marketplace, is reducing risk. So write that down. You must reduce the perceived risk on the part of buyers and sellers. So ask yourself this question: do the people I talk to perceive working with me as a less risky option than the other alternatives? Let me ask that question again. Do the people that I want to work with perceive me as a less risky option than the alternatives? And if the answer is yes, then it's inevitable that more often than not, they're going to choose you. Because ultimately, the number one value that you can offer anybody in real estate is safety. If they feel safe knowing that by working with you, that they have the best chance of getting what it is that they want, which is the most for their home, for the least amount of money in the shortest period of time, if they feel good about all of those things based upon the way that you conduct yourself, then ultimately you are reducing the risk and you're offering the ultimate value. So do they perceive you as the least risky option in the marketplace? And here's the follow-up question to that. How could you reduce risk for them? See, if they don't perceive you as the least risky option, then how is it that you can reduce risk for them? Think about that. What is it you could do to reduce the perceived risk that people have in working with you? Because that's ultimately what you have to do. If you're successful at that, you're going to be wildly successful in real estate. If you never do that, if you never figure out how to reduce the perceived risk in working with you versus the competition, then you just simply won't ever have enough business. You'll get some, but never enough on a predictable, duplicable level, at a high level. So what's the answer to that? Well, the first thing is this. How do you reduce risk? Well, you do it through process. Let them know that you have a process that you follow. What is your process? Are you clear on what your process is? Do you share with people what your process is and how that process is better? I mean, the mere fact that the competition has the MLS, well, you do too. Well, how is your process different? Well, it's not the MLS that's different. It's the way in which you leverage the MLS, right? It's not that you have business cards or it's not that you have a key box. It's the way in which you leverage those business cards or those key boxes, right? So it's your process and the way in which you go about doing the business on a daily basis. See, that will reduce the perceived risk in working with you if you're effective at sharing that message. Are you effective at sharing the message in terms of your process and what you do on a daily basis? Also, how do you reduce risk? We talked about it earlier about being proactive. The more proactive you are in your approach, the greater or the less perceived risk there will be in working with you. In other words, the greater sense of safety people will have in you and working with you, the more proactive you are. When they see somebody who is proactive, who actually takes the initiative to engage in conversation with people and address the difficult conversations, for example, the whole conversation about proactively pricing it and having a pricing strategy and having conversations about reducing the price of the home, particularly in today's marketplace, right? The agent who's willing to talk about that in the very beginning and say, hey, listen, I have a process that relates to pricing a home effectively. Could I share that with you? Can I also share with you what we do if for some chance the market continues to fall and we need to adjust to the market? Instead of chasing the market, we need to be proactive and stay on top of the market. Can I share with you what my process looks like? And gang, if you have a process where you describe to them what you do proactively to stay ahead of the market so they're not chasing the market down, but you help them get the highest price possible in today's marketplace, how do you think they're going to feel? Because here's what I know, your competition isn't talking about a pricing strategy. Your competition isn't talking about being proactive. Your competition isn't talking about a process. So if you'll do that, I promise you, you'll reduce the perceived risk. You'll become the least risky, the safest option that they have in the marketplace. And all of that comes through being effective at communication. You want to reduce the sense of perceived risk? Be effective at communicating the right concepts and right ideas. Key number 4 to being successful in today's marketplace. We have to be trustworthy and we have to be perceived as having integrity. So I want you to write those 2 words down. Be trustworthy and have integrity. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that appearing to be or being trustworthy and having integrity is not something that we can tell people. We can't tell people that we're trustworthy or that we have integrity. You can try, but I will tell you, anybody who tells me, hey, look, I'm trustworthy, you can trust me, you can believe in me, my first reaction to that is, I don't trust you. Because if you have to tell me that, you're probably not. So it's not about telling them that. You have to demonstrate that. You have to show that. So how do you do that? Well, you do that by keeping your commitments. So what it is, I want you to write down this terminology. It's about future pacing them. We have to be effective at future pacing. So we've got to help people understand what the process looks like, what they can expect, some of the things that may happen, not necessarily will happen, but may happen. You know, it may happen that as we price your home, the market will continue to shift, and we're going to have a conversation about reducing the price of your home. And we're going to have a conversation on a weekly basis so you're not surprised. In other words, future pace them, let them know that this may happen. And so therefore, we may have to take steps A, B, and C, right? It may be that the buyers in today's marketplace are going to come in and ask for you to pay some of their closing costs. They may ask that you buy down their interest rate. So have those conversations with them. Be proactive in future pacing them on some of the things that could potentially happen so that when they do happen, they're not surprised by it. And you can say, so remember when we talked about that this was a possibility? Well, here it is. It actually came to pass. So let's talk about what our next step is so that we can actually navigate this and successfully get you ultimately what it is that you want, which is the highest price possible if they're selling the home. Or let's help you navigate this and help you get this home and separate you from the competition who's bidding on this home in today's market with low inventory, right? So it's about making certain that you understand ultimately what their fears are, what their wants are, what their wishes are, what their needs are, what their desires are, if you will, and you'll then discuss with them what the potential outcomes are, what the solutions are to those wants, needs, wishes, desires, hopes, and fears, right? Discover what's important to them and describe to them how you're going to meet those expectations, right? Future pace them on the potential challenges. And then when those potential challenges come up, they're not surprised by it. And then you just simply say, remember, we talked about this. Now let's talk about those solutions that we talked about we may have to look at, like a price reduction, a pricing strategy. Okay. Remember, the key is understanding their expectations and helping them understand how you're going to meet those expectations, including having conversations about potential possibilities or unexpected, quote unquote, unexpected things that become not unexpected because we've had the conversations with him before those things ever popped up. Listen, the reason that people are reluctant to for example, a seller to give a price reduction is because in most cases, we've never talked about it until we actually ask for the price reduction. But if we talk about the potential for a price reduction, when we price the home and we list the home, and then we have consistent conversations on a weekly basis about what's happening in terms of exposure and response and what potential buyers have said and what they have done since they've looked at the subject property, it's a lot easier then to say we need to reduce the price of the home, because at that point they're educated in terms of what you've done proactively and also how the market has responded, instead of you trying to get them up to date in a conversation and then also at the same time say, and oh, by the way, we need to reduce the price of the home. It's a completely different set of circumstances. So we've got to make certain that we discover what's important to them. We future pace them in terms of what we're going to do and what the potential possible pitfalls or outcomes are going to be and what our solutions are to those challenges. And then ultimately, gang, make certain that we keep those commitments. And then finally, this, in terms of keys to success in real estate today, we have got to be willing, gang, to close them. You've got to be willing to ask for the business. And what I find is that this is just as difficult for agents as it is to prospect, to try to set appointments, to try to find leads, to ask for the business. I'll watch agents who, in fact, will prospect and have conversations, but they're unwilling to ask for the appointment or to ask for the signature on a contract. Gang, if you're going to be successful in real estate, I can tell you, you're going to have to be willing to ask for the business. You're going to have to be willing to ask for the signature on the contract. And if you'll do that, I promise you, you increase your chances exponentially in terms of the opportunities. You're going to get zero of the business that you don't ask for, but you're going to get some percentage of business that you ask for. That is a given. It's just a mathematical fact. So if you want to sell more real estate, that when you're talking with people, be willing to ask for the appointment, close for the appointment, be willing to ask for a signature on the contract, and be willing to ask multiple times. I remember years ago asking Dave Stocco, who, those of you who may remember Dave, was one of the best prospecting agents I've ever met, and he worked with FSBOs and expireds. And I remember asking Dave how many times he had to close a FSBO or an expired, asking for the appointment. And what was interesting, he said it took him between 5 and 7 times for them to agree to the appointment, and as many as 5 to 7 times for them to agree to sign the contract. Now, I want you to think about that. It speaks to my point here. You have got to be willing to close people. So look at these factors, connecting with people. Don't assume that you understand what is important to them. Ask a ton of questions. Give them an opportunity to share their story and listen to what they have to say. And in the process of doing that, I promise you're going to connect with people. You'll validate people. The second thing is offer them value. You offer them value ultimately by letting them know what it is that you do, that you communicate proactively, that you prospect, that you knock on doors, that you pick up the phone and you call people, that you follow a schedule, that you work on your skills daily, that you train on a daily basis to become a better negotiator in their behalf, to negotiate the best price on the home if they're buying one, or to negotiate the highest price possible on the home if they're selling one. Let them know proactively what it is that you do to offer value. You've got to reduce risk. If you'll reduce risk, and by letting them know ultimately that you're a great communicator and these are the things that you do, and show them how you separate yourself from the competition. Show them through your actions how you're trustworthy and how you have integrity. Not because you say you do things, but you do those things. You lead by example. You lead by doing the things, not just talking about them. And ultimately, you ask for their business. You respect the relationship. You show that the value that you offer is worthwhile, and it's so worthwhile that you're willing to ask for their commitment to work with you. And I promise you, gang, if you'll do these 5 things and you'll do them proactively in today's market, you will have enough business. You will, regardless of what's going on, regardless of the tight inventory, regardless of the increasing interest rates. I promise you, you'll have enough business. So please take a look at these things. Ask yourself, grade yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 in these 5 things, and ask yourself on a scale from 1 to 10, how effective am I at doing these things? And if you're not that effective, then ask yourself, where can I improve? And then make those improvements. And on a daily basis, work on these things. Because ultimately, the amount of income that you earn in real estate is a direct reflection of the amount of value that you offer. You want to increase your income, increase your value. You want to increase your value, then do these 5 things consistently. And I promise you, you'll make more money. You'll earn more money in real estate. So that's the conversation for today. Hope it was helpful. Thank you for letting me go over